This is a tutorial on how to create an open wound exposing robotic machinery. These are the products that are needed for this video. Most of these products have previously been used on tutorials and can be found on Amazon. During this video, make sure that you are wary of sharp objects and you avoid contact with your eyes and don't consume. First, visually plan the shape of the wound. Then scoop up some wax and roll it into a ball. Then press it into shape. Take this flat piece of wax and press the outer part onto your hand. Then start to smear it outwards. Keep adding wax until it's the shape you want. It can be any shape, however I recommend that it's not too big or in too many separate pieces, as it won't look as effective. Make sure it sort of resembles a gash mark. You can use the plastic spatula to smooth out any rough edges. When you are happy with how the wax looks, start to fill it in with a black paint. If you dilute the face paint with water too much, it will pool in the edges where the wax is and it won't dry. To be able to accomplish the metallic three-dimensional machinery pieces with just black and white, you will have to have a variety of shades, which can be made by adding a small amount of black onto the white palette and mixing it until you get 4 different tones of the grey. Flex your hand to find where some of your bones and tendons are, and see how the movement affects the different parts of your hand. You can use this as a guide to see where you should draw the lines to make it more realistic. Use a medium toned grey and start to mark out the main lines, and use a darker grey to add shading onto both ends. Use this darker colour to also create a circle which will look like a gear. You can then continue to add different shapes like squares and dashes lined up together, which can then look like a ridged pipe. Now use the lighter grey to add highlights. Do this by adding small lines where the highest point of that machinery part would be. For example, if it was a pipe or a steel rod, it would be in the centre towards the middle. Blend this out and keep going back in with the highlights. Make sure the grey shades are gradually getting lighter. Don't worry too much if this doesn't turn out the way you would like it, as it will be slightly covered by the wire. However, try to make it as believable as you can, so take your time with layering the highlights. Using the black, start to contour and build up the shadows. You can also use the black to add details on to make it seem that there are dents or lines in the metal. This can be an effective way to add texture and depth to your design. For the wire detailing, there will be a variety of wire manipulations, so you can experiment with your own ideas and shapes. But do be careful, as when the wire is cut, it can be sharp. Make sure you cut the wire away from you and hold the wire so that it doesn't bounce back into your eye. With this type of wire, you can unravel it into smaller strips of wire so it can look like it's branching off in different directions. You can then retwist some of the wires together to connect them and make them look more visible. Continue to bend and adjust the wire until you are satisfied. Line it up with your hand and see where you may need to trim it down or adjust it to coordinate with the To create a spring, cut off a longer piece of wire and start to unravel it to get a thinner piece. Once you have done that, find a smaller object like a pencil or paintbrush and start to wrap the wire around it. Make sure the wire isn't overlapping or wrapped around too tight, otherwise you won't be able to slide it off. Whilst wrapping it around, pull the loose wire towards the wrap part. This keeps the wire at an equal distance from each other and creates a more consistent and tighter spring. When you have plenty of wire designs and you have a rough idea of how you're going to layer them, take a small pot and squeeze out some liquid latex. Then take the smaller pieces you are going to apply and dip both ends into the latex. Slide it under the flap of wax that's acting as the fake robotic skin. Start with the smaller, simpler pieces of wire, as it will be easier to layer on top of those rather than the complex ones. Keep repeating this process and make sure all of the wires are tucked under the flap and are secured with enough liquid latex to stick them down. When it comes to adding the spring, it may be tricky to get it to stay into place. So bend it into an arch beforehand and apply the latex generously onto the area you want it to stick down to. You may need to hold it in place whilst it dries. Keep alternating between the shapes and directions of the wire. To tie the wire and the painted details, use a thin paintbrush and start to brush over the wire with a black face paint. This then makes the wire look more rustic and adds a darker finish to the metal. It also creates a more detailed texture to your design. At this point, if you wanted to change the colour of the wire drastically to a red or a blue, and you have that face paint, you can do that here as well. This is how mine turned out in the end. And thank you for watching.